Howell, who was the superintendent of Sunday schools for many years. She was instigating and starting the service class, which I've been in ever since I was about 18 or 19 years old. Started out as just a girls' class. Out of high school, and there wasn't a class for us, and we started about 5 girls, and then it grew into, when the boys came home from the service, to a couples class.
And exchange it someday for a crown. Oh, that old rugged cross, so despised by the world, has a wondrous attraction.
It grew from those original 5 up to a membership of approximately 250 to 300 members in the 60s. Since that time, other classes have been formed. In the 50s, the Homemakers class was formed, and then 7 years ago, the 2 classes were merged together into one class, the Service Homemakers class. And I have served as the teacher of that combined class for a total of 15 years now. I was in the church, but not active in any Sunday school class at the time, and was wandering in the hallways waiting for the service to start, and heard music playing, and there was a piano accompanying the singers. So I wandered to try to find where the sound was coming from, and it was coming from the service classroom, and Martha Clark was playing the piano, and they were singing my favorite hymn, "It Is Well With My Soul." And so out of the blue, I just decided to walk in and participated in the class that Sunday. The following Sunday, I went back again, and they were singing then as well. And after the lesson, they invited me to be their teacher after my second visit there. One of the things I remember most about the class, both the Homemakers class and the service class, is the personalities of the people. Dick Clark. Dick Clark was a greeter who was the head greeter in this church for many, many decades, and he was noted for several things. Most importantly, of course, his tie that lighted up on Christmas Eve, and that was very important. But also, he provided a pair of new shoes for every pastor that was the pastor of Kessler Park United Methodist Church. It was kind of his thing. He wanted the pastor to be well dressed, and since the pastors almost always wear robes, the shoes were the only thing that people could really see besides the robe. So Glenn Griffin and Martha, and how Martha's knowledge of the Scripture has given us a strength that otherwise would not be there. She keeps me honest in my teaching, and I really have to prepare so that she won't catch me with a mistake somewhere during the lesson. Of this glorious thought. I think of Ruth Crowe and her red hair, and I think of Ruth Wheeler and her experiences flying planes during World War II, and I think of Sherwin Smitty Smith and his activities during World War II, flying over the hump, and the tremendous service that so many members of this class provided for our country. And I look at the Unsels, Bob and Jerry, and I look at Bob, and I remember the stories of when he played on the church baseball team. back many, many years ago, and the beginnings of his faith were centered around baseball, and the entire Kessler Park community had a major emphasis on baseball, and it was extremely important. He went on from that to be the chairman of just about every committee in the church, and many of them he ran for a long, long time. Term limits didn't always exist back in those days.
Where did you go to church as a child?
Tyler Street. Mother was in a class called the pool class, and they got mad at the preacher. Vanderpool was his name. And they all moved to Kessler. That's how I got in Kessler.
What? Do you have any recollection of what they were angry about?
No, I never knew.
Oh, they didn't tell you.
But
That's church life for you.
that's church life. Oh, me.
Married in the old church. We were the last couple married in the old church.
Well, he kissed me, and I said,
I made a good kiss out of it, and she left.
yep, oh.
So we left the church laughing. Her mom was about to die because I kissed her so long.
Oh, Lord.
The top two pictures are of Tom's and my wedding. The picture on this side is as we were pronounced man and wife. And then this picture is as we walked up the aisle. Tom turned to me and he said, "Hello, Mrs. Williams." So he was the first one to call me Mrs. Williams. In those days, when the bride and groom turned around to walk down the aisle, the pastor didn't say, "And I present to you Mr. and Mrs. or Dr. and Mrs. or whatever." He just said, "I pronounce you man and wife." We kissed and turned and walked out of the church. That's the way it was done in the 50s. Then the next set of pictures is of Kathy and David Hodge as they were pronounced man and wife. And they are walking up the aisle, going out together. And David was just so pleased that they were finally married, and Kathy was too, because they dated for 8 years before they got married. And then the last set of pictures is of their oldest daughter, Kathy and David's oldest daughter, Jennifer, and her husband, Kelly, as they were pronounced man and wife, and as they got ready to walk up the aisle.
All of our family went to church there. Her mother and her father, they were staunch church members. After we'd been in the new church building for a while, and the adult Sunday school class, they met in the room where the children's room is, that big room up there, and it was completely full of people. There was that many people that came to Sunday school. Yeah, there's not not too many of the what I'd call old timers that are still. Of course, most of them died. We've outlived most of them. See that when they moved in that church, in that property, there were no trees in that lot. It was a vacant lot there next to the street.
They cleaned it off.
And planted those big trees. Or they weren't that big, they were little trees then. Of course, that's been 50-something years ago. He planted all those big trees out there. They were little old scraggly thing, but he planted them all over that yard out there on the south side of the church. And he made his son so mad that his son wouldn't come to church anymore because they played football. There was a big, all that place out there, all those big trees are. It was a vacant lot, clear out to the street. And boy, the kids played football in there all the time, you know. And that man, the daddy of that man, of that kid, he was on board, and he said, we're not going to have that. We're going to plant trees in there. And they did. They planted that thing full of trees, which all the, you know, those trees now are this big around. But he planted all those trees in there, and mainly it was to keep the kids out of playing football out there on that yard.
The Homemakers service class is comprised of about 20 members, 15 to 16 come each week. Some are not able to be with us any longer, but this is a group that is the backbone and the cornerstone of this church, and provides not only a financial basis for this church to continue to operate, but also a spiritual basis and a basis of activity within the committees, within the overall fabric of Kessler Park United Methodist Church. I think the level of trust is most important. When someone in this class says they're going to do something, they do it. You can count on it. You can be assured that things are going to take place. When they volunteer for a service or to provide food for a funeral, for example, it always gets done, and it gets done early. And through the action of Nell Lind and others who have provided assistance, it always gets done very beautifully. The members of this class are just filled with love for all persons, no matter what their color, creed, sexual orientation, and really their beliefs. We've been accepting to all faiths, and that's a marvelous thing that I think is unique, or at least foremost in the minds of this generation, that is so vital to our church.
Well, I think we're more open-minded. Definitely our church is, which I think is a good thing. I think we are a welcoming church that maybe way back, we wouldn't have been that way. We would have been a little more prejudiced, I'm afraid.
I can remember being told way back in the 60s and early 70s that Kessler Park Methodist Church had a reputation in the Methodist churches in the city as being a silk stocking church. Well, we certainly didn't see ourselves that way, and I'm so glad. And I still think we're definitely not a silk stocking church. We're a good church. We're culturally adaptive, and open-hearted, as I think Jesus wants us to be, as I know He wants us to be.
I come to the garden alone while the dew.
We did a little experiment, and we calculated amongst the 25 members of the class who were there that day how many years of marriage were represented by the members of the Service and Homemakers class. And we added them all up, and it was 874 years of marriage. Now, that's pretty incredible within just 25 people in the class. And there were no duplicates at the time. There were no duplicates. And that didn't count second marriages, because all of them were first marriages at that level. But 874, that's a great number.
Has ever known. He. He speaks, and the sound of his voice